Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast, a show created to be your go-to source for straightforward retirement advice. Best of all, it is presented in a language that you can understand. Are you ready for some straight talk on retirement planning without all the fluff? Well, you found the right podcast. Here's your host, certified financial planner, Greg Gonzalez.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm Greg Gonzalez. Thanks for joining me today. Happy New Year to all of our wonderful listeners. We are anticipating a great year for 2025 with our market outlook. You can get that on our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. Under the resources tab, you can put in your email and it will be emailed to you free of charge. I won't spoil anything, but all the market outlooks that I've read from all the different financial institutions and economists out there, they are anticipating a good year, a favorable year in the markets and the economy for 2025. We will have to see how it pans out. But aside from the market, when it comes to retirement planning, there's already some big changes that are taking place and starting in 2025. One of them was actually a new law, the Social Security Fairness Act, which was signed by President Biden on January 5th. So we'll talk about that on today's episode because that's going to impact 3 million Americans. And we have a number of clients at our firm that are approaching retirement or already retired. They're going to be positively impacted by that legislation, as well as the Secure Act 2.0, that part of it went into play in the start of 2025. And so for those people that are 60 years old to 63 years old, by the end of the calendar year, starting in 2025, you are able to have a bigger catch-up for your 401k and 403b and 457 governmental retirement plans. You now have a bigger catch-up, and your limit for 2025 is $34,750 that you're able to contribute now to your retirement plan through work. As I've mentioned on previous podcasts, this is a change. Again, it was due to the Secure Act 2.0 that went into effect the start of 2025, and it's a confusing, I don't know why they came up with, for the people 60 to 63, why not just 60 and older? It makes no sense to me. And a side note, if you're one of those people that contributes to a simple IRA through your employer, typically that's going to be for small businesses with less than 100 employees. You do have an enhanced catch-up as well for people aged 60 to 63 by the end of the calendar year. So those contributing to a simple IRA, it's $21,750 if you're within that age band. Once you turn 64, it goes back to the 50 plus catch-up. So again, this is very confusing. I don't know why Congress decided, hey, for these few years, we're going to make this special catch-up provision strictly for these people. So these changes, again, whether it's a change to Social Security, whether it's a change to your 401k, the rules of the game change year by year. And it just reminds us, hey, we've got to update your retirement plan, and whatever strategy you have, it might be different year to year because the tax rules, the contribution limits, the income limits of all these different accounts and who can contribute what and what the taxes are. Believe me, I do this every day, and it's a lot to keep up with. So I can imagine for the novice out there that's trying to understand the most up-to-date rules and regulations, it can be easy to be misinformed or make mistakes. But one thing I wanted to do on today's episode is give you an update on Social Security, because I cannot tell you how often I have someone say to me, well, my brother-in-law said you need to claim your Social Security benefit right away at age 62, whether you're working or not. Claim it, get it while the getting's good, because the money's going to run out and there's not going to be nothing. And I, again, caution you, as I've many times on this podcast, be careful who you take financial advice from, because it can really impact your retirement years and your future financial stability. I just see people make decisions and then they have to live with regret for the rest of their life because someone told them, hey, put all your money in gold, or take some very drastic financial action that ends up having lasting consequences that really can derail somebody's retirement. One of those being claiming Social Security at 62. For some people, that's going to make sense. For others, it can be one of the worst decisions they make when it comes to retirement planning by claiming that early at 62. What's right for one person is not going to be right for another. But looking at, and we'll try to include a link in the show notes to this, but the Social Security Trustees report in May of 2024 said, if Congress does not intervene, if there's no changes to the current makeup and structure of Social Security, the fund reserves are going to be depleted in 2035. That's 10 years from now. And then at that point, retirees would only be able to receive 83 cents on the dollar. That is not my opinion. That is the Social Security Trustees report in May of 2024. So just last year. So 10 years. There would be no implications for 10 years. Now, that's if Congress does not intervene and come up with some kind of change to Social Security. Now, it's not only my opinion, but there's going to have to be some changes. We've talked about different proposals to change Social Security, to bail it out or fix it, to get it back on solid ground. And we'll have to just see what they come up with. In my opinion, they're going to come up with a fix. Whether they wait until the last minute, we'll have to wait and see. But I wanted to bring to everybody's attention this Social Security Fairness Act that President Biden signed. It passed in the House and Senate with flying colors. This had support from both sides of the aisle. And what is this? This is going to help 3 million Americans. And let me kind of describe this for you. I live in the state of Missouri. And if you're a teacher in the public school system in the state of Missouri, for example, you do not pay into Social Security. You will have, however, a very, very nice teacher's pension one day because you pay in so much throughout your working career. Now, by my research, there's about 15 states where teachers don't pay into Social Security. There's also government workers. There's also firefighters that may get a pension. And since they didn't pay into Social Security, what they get as far as a spousal benefit or survivor benefit from Social Security, maybe they had enough earnings history where they were paying into Social Security that they might have a small check or maybe a medium-sized check. Well, there were these provisions that were called the Windfall Elimination Provision and Government Pension Offset, so GPO and WEP. And essentially what they did was they limited or reduced the amount of a Social Security check that these workers, these retirees could be eligible for because of those years that they were not paying into Social Security because they were paying in and being eligible for this pension that they would one day receive. So you've got about 3 million people that were negatively impacted by these provisions. Again, the WEP and GPO, and these provisions were put into place because they felt, oh, these people are double dipping. They're getting a Social Security check and they were getting a pension for the years that they were not covered under Social Security, meaning they weren't paying in. So this Social Security Fairness Act, which was just signed by President Biden on January 5th, it did away with these provisions, the WEP and the GPO. So for all those people that had work that was not covered under Social Security, well, they're still going to be eligible for a full spousal, full survivor benefit, or for those years that they did pay into Social Security, they'll be entitled to that full Social Security benefit. So many, many people, again, about 3 million Americans, are going to experience a higher Social Security check than before this law was put into place. We have started to contact some of our clients that this will impact at our firm. A lot of these people are just delighted. I'll give you one example, and this is kind of an extreme example. We have one teacher here in the state of Missouri that's going to retire here in a couple of years, but her Social Security check was going to be practically nothing. She had enough years paying into Social Security, 40 quarters, which is essentially 10 years before she got into teaching. Her Social Security check was going to be very, very small because, again, those provisions reduced her Social Security check to the point where it's pretty much not even worth talking about. But with those being lifted, now she's going to get her full spousal benefit at age 67, which is half of her husband's. And her husband, he had a very, very good career. He has had a very good career and will continue to for the next few years. High income earning guy. And she's going to get 50% of his check, which is almost $2,000 a month. In her instance, when she was expecting pretty much nothing out of Social Security, and then, okay, all of a sudden now she's going to get half of her husband's benefit, which is approximately $2,000 a month and $24,000 a year. And let's assume she has a 30-year retirement and you're getting $2,000 a month plus all the cost of living increases that she would get over that time period. We're talking about a lot of money here. Big difference, big benefit to their retirement plan. So we're starting to revise those retirement plans since this law came into effect January 5th. Again, this is not just retired teachers in those 15 states. This is for government workers that maybe weren't paying into Social Security, firefighters, people in public service that maybe weren't expecting much, if at all, of a Social Security benefit check. So a law like this can drastically change your retirement outlook. And this just went into effect. They had been working on this particular legislation for years, and we had known about this. But until it passes, there's no sense modifying somebody's retirement plan on what could be or might be. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, okay, we've got this new administration in the White House. Now, he campaigned on the idea, many ideas, quite frankly, but one of them was he wanted to eliminate taxes, federal income taxes on Social Security benefit checks. Now, whether or not he's going to follow through with that, whether Congress is going to pass some legislation that would make that a reality, we'll just have to wait and see. But this is another thing that could drastically impact people's retirement. Imagine a couple with $50,000 of taxable Social Security income that is no longer taxed. There's zero income taxes on that. It's like they drew it out of a Roth IRA. This could be huge for people. It would allow people to maybe do Roth conversions that they hadn't planned on. It could put them in a lower tax environment. It could reduce their Medicare Part B premiums and Part D premiums because maybe they're in a lower tax situation. And like I said, for Roth conversions, they don't make sense for everybody every single year. But if all of a sudden Social Security is no longer taxed, well, Roth conversions, in my opinion, would become much more common and utilized. Now, here's the deal. With changes to Social Security, they don't come very often, but before 1983, Social Security was never taxed. And then in 1983, they said, okay, Congress came out and said, we're going to change that. Part of your Social Security is going to be taxed starting, or could be taxed, depending on your income, starting in 1984. And then again in 1993, they upped the ante and they increased it once again. But it has not changed. How we tax Social Security has not changed since 1993. And the table they came up with was not indexed for inflation. So since 1993, how we tax Social Security and the income limits has not changed. And I think that was really foolish to not include some type of inflation adjustment for that table back in 1993. I mean, come on. What if you said, okay, in 1993, whatever you were making then, you never got a raise, and here we are in 2025. So in my opinion, this is something that could, and I'm not getting political. I don't want this episode to turn into, hey, send Greg messages on our political stance, because I do not care to get political on this website, and that's not the point. The point is that there could be some changes to how Social Security is taxed. There was a huge monumental change for a lot of Americans, 3 million Americans, but that also came at a cost because there's more money going out the door. If you're increasing 3 million Americans' Social Security checks or benefits that they will be receiving now and in the future, that's wonderful for those Americans that are going to set to benefit. Like I said, about a dozen of our clients are in that picture. However, keep in mind, the Social Security trust fund and system is less financially sound because now there's more money going out. and we haven't changed how much money is coming into the system. I wanted to switch gears now, and I wanted to get into some listener questions because we have been getting them. I think something about the end of the year, people have questions. Maybe they listened to the podcast that I did in December when I gave my prediction for 2025. A lot of people are going to be retiring. That's what I've been experiencing with our firm here in St. Louis, but we have clients in over 20 different states, so geographically it doesn't matter. And you can submit your questions for the podcast. Go to our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. At the bottom, you can submit your question. We'll get back to you, and we might even use your question on a segment of a future podcast. And for those people that are looking for help from a retirement specialist, you can contact our team right there on our website. There's a button that says work with us, and you can fill out the form. So the first question this week comes from a listener, and I'm going to paraphrase because this is a long message, which is totally okay. This particular listener had a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about retirement, especially retiring before 59 and a half. But essentially, what is the case with this listener is it sounds like a lot of his funds are in his 401k, and he's trying to come up with a strategy where he can begin to take withdrawals and avoid that 10% early withdrawal penalty. As many listeners know, with IRAs, for example, traditional IRAs, if you draw money out before you're age 59 and a half, there is a 10% early withdrawal penalty. There's some exceptions to that, such as disability. So check with your financial planner and your tax advisor to see if you qualify for any of those. But he mentioned a 72T as a way to get around that 10% early withdrawal penalty because he's retiring at age 57, and that was due to some health reasons. So to explain the 72T, a 72T allows you to take money out of a traditional IRA and avoid a 10% early withdrawal penalty. And you have to take equal amounts out of the IRA in at least 5 years or until you reach 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So let's assume this guy's 57, he said. So he's 2.5 years from 59 and a half. So that means 5 years would be longer than 2.5 years. So for the next 5 years, he would have to take equal distributions from this IRA, and then he would avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty, and he would be A-okay. Now, you need to let your tax advisor know, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm incorporating a 72T. Your financial planner will make sure they check the box that says, hey, this is a equal amount 72T distribution. So when you get a 1099, that box is checked. There's things that you've got to make sure happen to avoid the 10% penalty. And a word of caution, if you mess this up, those equal distributions, those equal payments for 5 years, you have to pay the 10% penalty on everything. So you don't want to mess it up. A better option for some people is there is a provision with your 401k as long as you retire after age 55 to take distributions directly from the 401k, and then you avoid that 10% early withdrawal penalty. Not a lot of people know that, but again, you have to retire after your 55th birthday. If you retire at 53, you don't have that option. So when we talk about a strategy, a retirement plan, a retirement income strategy on this website, this is what we're talking about for some people is, hey, where does my income come from? It looks at taxes, early withdrawal penalties. We're talking about a game plan. How are we going to make this work? And this listener's concerned about avoiding that 10% early withdrawal penalty. Obviously, if you retire at 59 and a half or later, it's not even on your radar because that early withdrawal penalty no longer applies. That's a great question, though, especially for those people that are considering an early retirement. This next listener said that her husband is already retired and she is working, and she was told by someone at work that their financial advisor said she's the only one that can contribute to a Roth IRA because she's the only one that has a paycheck. Since her husband doesn't have a paycheck, he can't contribute to a Roth IRA. She contributes both to her Roth 401k through work, which she's eligible for a match, a company match, and then she also contributes the $8,000 a year to her Roth IRA. Her goal is to get as many dollars as she can into the Roth bucket, which grows tax-free. And she says that they are in the 12% tax bracket. And then she asked, was I given bad advice? Well, you do need earned income to contribute to a Roth IRA. You are right. The limit for if you're 50 or over, it's $8,000 a year. If you're under age 50, it's $7,000 a year is what you contribute to a Roth IRA. Now, there are income limits that you need to be aware of, meaning if you make too much money, you may not be able to do a Roth IRA. Maybe you might look at a backdoor Roth IRA. But this listener, for example, said that she's in the 12% income bracket. So that tells me right away, hey, she's under that Roth IRA income limit. She is fully eligible. So as long as her income is $16,000, she's taxed on $16,000 and earns $16,000 in wages or tips or commissions or earned income, $16,000. That means that for 2025, she can contribute $8,000 to her own Roth IRA and her spouse can contribute $8,000 as well. This is a spousal IRA. That means, for example, if one spouse is a homemaker, they don't have reportable earned income, they can still contribute to a Roth IRA because their working spouse has the income to help them to satisfy that. Now, hypothetically, if you only made $8,000, if spouse A made $8,000 and spouse B was a homemaker or retired and didn't have earned income, they could each do $4,000 to a Roth IRA. Now, there's a lot of bad information, misinformation out there. Believe me, I see it constantly with people. Maybe they were working with either an advisor or a financial consultant that was missing things or giving them false information. And really, it can impact you. Example, this nice listener, if her husband put $8,000 into a Roth IRA that's going to grow tax-free in that account for the rest of his life, versus he left it in another account that he's paying taxes on interest and capital gains potentially, it's going to be very, very hard to convince me that there's anything better than tax-free growth inside of a Roth vehicle versus paying taxes on it outside of a Roth IRA, Roth 401k account year in and year out. I really, really question the wisdom in that. So this was a great question. Thank you for submitting this question. And a lot of people need to keep that in mind that, hey, you do need earned income, but both spouses don't need earned income to still contribute to Roth IRAs. Once neither spouse has earned income because you're fully retired, there's no part-time work or anything like that, then you can no longer contribute to a Roth IRA. You can do Roth conversions. And that would be the only way to get more money into the Roth side of the equation. Of course, if it makes sense for your situation in a given year. The next question from a listener is in regards to deferred comp plans, deferred compensation. A lot of times these are available to either management or higher income individuals within a company. And this was a longer email as well from this listener. I'm just going to kind of summarize this. Now, this is not going to apply to all listeners, these deferred compensation plans. Many people just have access to a 401k or something like that. But this is a word of caution to people because I see this on occasion, and a lot of people mess this up. So with these deferred compensation plans, you really, really need to be careful because I have seen several occasions where people really don't understand what they are. They aren't explained very well to them, but they are offered as a way to, hey, get tax deferral for funds that you place into a deferred compensation plan as an employee benefit. And you get to invest it typically just like a 401k. Maybe there's company stock in there or something like that. But on the way out, these are all pre-tax dollars. So you've got to pay taxes on it upon withdrawal. Well, it's a bigger risk. And I have access to one of these. I don't contribute to it. And I'll explain why. Because when it comes time to start taking withdrawals out of something like this, when you contribute each year, you get to decide, hey, these contributions, I'm putting money into this thing. The participant gets to decide how they're eventually taxed. In other words, whether you want this pool of money paid out after you retire for the next 10 years, or whether you want it as a lump sum, or whether you want it paid out for 15 years. And as it's paid out, you're taxed on it. And every year, so each batch of funds that you contribute to this thing, you get to dictate, okay, whether I want it paid out a year after I retire or separate from service, and it gets paid out as a lump sum, then you're taxed on that full amount of money. And it can really, really put you in a bad situation tax-wise, and you can be paying excess taxes. Because in my experience, think about it, you may not retire from that company. And the way these things work is they get paid out either upon a certain amount of time after retirement or upon separation from service. So think about that. If you get laid off or you find another opportunity with another firm, whatever the case may be, well, how is that going to impact you tax-wise on your deferred comp plan? And the other thing is what we find is whatever choice that you select, that choice cannot be changed. It's irrevocable is the word. So it cannot be changed at any point in the future. I've even had cases where hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to be taxed in a single year as a result of these deferred comp plans. So 9 times out of 10, in my experience, people don't understand these deferred compensation plans very well and really the tax implications of them. And they really limit your choices and your flexibility in the future. Again, greater risk with them. I run into people that, hey, they retire with $1 million in a deferred comp plan and they get paid out starting in the 13th month after they retire, they're paid out 10% a year for 10 years, or, in that case, it would be $100,000 a year for 10 years. And again, with no flexibility whatsoever. So again, be careful, plan if you're going to contribute to these, speak with your financial planner, come up with a strategy in regards to this. I would highly, highly recommend, even if you got a second opinion, be careful. Because I've seen several instances where these just become tax nightmares for people. And again, that's my opinion, but it really, really bites them in the rear end. And the last question, and again, I'm going to paraphrase these. I'm not a great reader. I had a speech impediment when I was a kid, so I won't put everybody through that. But this listener, their question was in regards to a couple different questions within a question. Number one, as far as your HSA plan that they're contributing to through work, what happens with that after they retire, and what happens if they were to pass away. So an HSA, just like a 401k or Roth IRA or for anything, is going to have beneficiaries that you name. So heaven forbid you pass away, it might go to your spouse or your kids. That's very common. You want to make sure those beneficiaries are listed on your HSA, just like your 401k or any retirement accounts. I actually have a client that has listed one of their children that has some, more health issues due to a circumstance than the other children. And so they said, hey, that's something that I'm going to give them because of everything they've had to go through throughout life, that they would need the funds for medical expenses, maybe more than the other adult children. But you get to pick. And then when you retire, again, those funds don't just go away inside of a health savings account. You still have access to them. You can invest them as you see fit. Obviously, you can no longer contribute to them if, you retire, maybe go on Medicare or something like that. But the money doesn't disappear. The next question was in regards to Social Security benefits for an ex-spouse. She was looking for clarification on the rules and specifics when it comes to getting a spousal benefit for an ex-spouse. So number one, for an ex-spouse, would have had to be married to that person for 10 years or longer for you to still be eligible for spousal benefits. The other thing is you have to wait until you're 60 or over or older to remarry. So as long as you're still single or you waited until you were 60 or over, you could still claim spousal benefits on that person. You don't need to drag your ex-spouse into the Social Security office. So this listener was concerned about the headache and everything that would go into it. You would just need their Social Security number. You would need a marriage certificate and divorce decree. book an appointment with Social Security and go in there, and they'll be able to say, okay, this is what your spousal benefit would be based on your ex-spouse's earnings history, and this is what your own benefit would be at certain ages. So in that regard, the spousal benefit for an ex-spouse works as if you were still married, and it doesn't impact theirs. So by you claiming your spousal benefit, it's not going to impact them, your ex-spouse, one way or the other. In fact, they're never even going to know. And the other thing to keep in mind, because I've had this come into a play with clients, here and there, is if an ex-spouse were to pass away and you are eligible for spousal and survivor benefits, let's say they were receiving $3,500 a month and you're over here and on your own benefit is $2,000 a month, you might be eligible likely for what's called the survivor benefit. So meaning you would get their benefit of $3,500 and your $2,000 a month benefit would drop off. Now, we would never wish ill will on people, but keep in mind, if an ex-spouse is in very, very poor health, the survivor benefit could come into play sooner rather than later, depending on their health, because that could really, really change your planning if you were armed with the knowledge of really how these spousal and survivor benefits work and how it's going to impact you. And then the last question is in regards to helping mom and dad out that are going into independent living and assisted living. This particular listener was very, very similar to my own parents. When my mom retired, she thought, oh, we're going to travel, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Come to find out, my grandparents ended up, their health kind of deteriorated at that same time. And my mom spent a lot of time taking her mother to doctor's appointments and things like that. And that wasn't really the retirement she had envisioned or planned on. But for the first 4 or 5 years of her retirement, she was spending a lot of time helping my grandmother out. And even more so as her health continued to decline, in helping mom and dad out, what's the best way to go about that? I would recommend, and this is just because I've seen so much with clients, their families, my own family, is if you want to be a blessing to mom and dad, you got to make sure that, hey, they have the proper estate planning documents in place. So one of those being a power of attorney for finances and then a healthcare power of attorney as well. So whether that's you, a sibling, another family member, a loved one like a friend or relative, whoever it is, you really, really need to have those people in place because, and I've had this happen with clients with their own parents, they thought those documents were in place, but if somebody's not in the right mental state and no longer has the mental capacity, they no longer can make those decisions for themselves and you cannot assign somebody. So, for example, if mom's mental capacity has declined to the point where, hey, she can't really make prudent decisions on her own, no attorney is going to draft a healthcare or financial power of attorney document at that point because an estate attorney is a fiduciary and they have an obligation, an ethical, moral obligation. So get those documents in place. Again, typically they're a standing powers of attorney for healthcare and financial, and it's going to be someone that you trust. Typically, it's going to be your son or daughter, friend, relative, somebody. And maybe they need to be updated. Sometimes these estate planning documents are 30 years old and maybe they named each other, mom and dad named each other. Well, that's only good until the last person's standing. Then at that point, you need to have people listed as backups. But again, getting those documents in place because sooner or later, you're going to be limited on what you can do in the most probably emotional times of your life. You don't want to be scrambling at that point. So I know this episode, we covered a lot. The changes to Social Security, changes to 401k contributions for those people 60 to 63. Then we went into questions. The questions were all over the board when it comes to retirement planning. Everybody's situation's different. Everybody's going through something unique to them. And the concerns that people have about retirement, yeah, there's going to be some similarities, but there's also going to be some questions like the deferred comp question that's very, very specific to the individual. If you have questions, again, submit them at our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. If you want to talk to somebody, you can find us there, work with us, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. I'll see you next time. And remember, always dream big.
Content in this material is for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. The content in this material does not necessarily reflect the views of LPL Financial. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific situation. Your results will vary. The hypothetical rates of return used do not reflect the deduction of fees and charges inherent to investing. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments might be appropriate for you, please consult your attorney, tax advisor, or financial planner prior to investing. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific investment. Your results may vary. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices mentioned are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance your overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect completely against market risk. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor. Fixed and variable annuities are suitable for long-term investing, such as retirement investing. Gains from tax-deferred investments are taxed as ordinary income upon withdrawal. Guarantees are based on the claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals made prior to age 59.5 are subject to a 10% IRS penalty tax, and surrender charges may apply. Variable annuities are subject to market risk and may lose value. Riders are additional guarantee options that are available to an annuity or life insurance contract holder. While some riders are part of an existing contract, many others may carry additional fees, charges, and restrictions, and the policyholder should review their contract before purchasing. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor. Retire Strong Financial Advisors and LPL Financial are not endorsed by or affiliated with the United States Social Security Administration or any government agency. Retire Strong Financial Advisors and LPL Financial are not endorsed by or affiliated with the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services or any government agency.
Thank you for listening to the show today. Check us out at our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. And if you want some help from Greg, submit your questions at the bottom of the page or sign up for a 30-minute retirement coaching session with Greg. We'll see you next week.